Schizophrenics. What is the scariest hallucination, visually or audibly, that you have ever experienced? Part 2. This was it. The woman in room 12. I used to care for a woman who had Lewy body dementia. It is not the same thing as schizophrenia, but it brings on some of the worst hallucinations I have ever seen a person endure. I worked the night shift, 10 o'clock in the evening until 6 in the morning, and her room was just a few doors down from my office. Most nights, I could hear her before I even sat down. The screaming would start not long after lights out. Loud, sharp, drawn-out cries that went straight through your bones. I would leave my desk and head to her room, sit by her bedside, and try to calm her down. I would ask, "Is something scaring you?" She would nod or shake, eyes wide, pointing into the corner of the room. She said people were standing there, just barely hidden in the shadows, watching her, laughing in low, cruel voices. She told me their faces twisted and stretched like they were made of rubber. Their eyes were wrong, too big, or missing altogether. Sometimes she told me she felt rats crawling over her skin, running up her legs, across her back, even under her clothes. But it did not stop there. She would say they were getting inside her. She described the sensation of being violated by them, like they were gnawing at her from the inside out. She felt them biting her organs, clawing around inside her body, and then pushing out through her eyes. She was terrified, every single night. And yet, and this is what made her so remarkable, she was still sharp enough most of the time to talk clearly, crack jokes, and hold real conversations. She had a sense of humor that would catch you off guard, even on the worst nights. She knew what she was experiencing was not real, but that did not make the pain or the fear go away. Those hallucinations were just as powerful as anything in the real world. She once looked me in the eye and said, "I know there are not rats in me, but it feels like there are. So it might as well be true, right?" Over time, her grip on reality started to fade. There came a point where she could no longer separate the real from the imagined. The screams got worse. The fear became constant. And there was nothing we could do to fully pull her out of it. She passed away a few months back. I had worked with her for 2 years, and I still miss her more than I can explain. But I also feel thankful that she is no longer living in that horror night after night. In this line of work, death is not rare. It is part of the job, and you learn to carry it without breaking. But the day she passed, every single staff member on duty lined up to say goodbye as they wheeled her out. People were crying, not just one or two, but all of us. I had never seen anything like it. She changed us. Every person who cared for her came away different. It was not just the pain she endured, though that was a big part of it. It was her strength, her spirit, her ability to smile even when she was being hunted by monsters only she could see. I think about her often. And every time I do, I remember her as someone who lived through something most people will never understand, and did it with more grace than I thought was possible. The morning that broke me. I have been living with schizoaffective disorder for most of my life. It runs in my family, so it was not exactly a surprise when I was diagnosed. I take an antipsychotic and a mood stabilizer every day, actually, multiple times a day, to keep things under control. It has helped a lot, but sometimes, even with the meds, something still slips through. I live in a quiet little town, the kind of place where you can name every face you pass on the sidewalk. Everyone knows everyone, especially in the part of town I call home. We are a tight bunch. Most of the time, that feels like a blessing. But not always. One morning, things felt normal. I got out of bed, felt good, made a cup of coffee like I always do, and stood by the front door sipping it. My cat likes to go outside in the early hours, so I opened the door and let her out. That is when I saw him. A big guy, no shirt on, just pants, running full speed down the street and straight into my neighbor Brad's backyard. He disappeared behind the house and was gone from sight. I just stood there stunned. It was around 7 in the morning, and nothing like that ever happens around here. And something about it did not sit right with me. Now, here is the part that gets hard to explain to people who do not experience delusions. When they hit, they feel real. You do not stop and question whether what you are seeing makes sense. There is no part of your brain that says, "Hey, this might not be happening." You just believe it. All the way. So, in that moment, I was fully convinced that this man had broken into Brad's yard. I figured maybe he was trying to steal something, or hurt someone, or who knows what. My brain filled in all the blanks, and it never occurred to me that I might be wrong. I threw on a bathrobe and stepped outside, still in my boxers. I crossed the lawn and marched into Brad's backyard, shouting, trying to track the guy down. I kept saying, "I saw him come back here. I know he's hiding." It did not take long before someone called the police. Next thing I know, they show up, and there I am, yelling, frantic in my bathrobe, in someone else's yard, chasing a person who does not exist. The man I saw was never real. The officers were calm, thankfully. But they still had to do their job. They arrested me right there in the yard. The worst part? People saw it happen. Neighbors standing on their porches, looking on. Folks I have known my whole life watching me get led away, confused and embarrassed, thinking I was helping, thinking I was right. People often expect stories like mine to be full of ghosts or demons or strange creatures, something wild and cinematic. But real horror? Real horror is standing there in broad daylight, your reality crumbling around you, while your community watches you fall apart. That kind of fear, the fear of losing touch with what is real and what is not, that is something that lingers long after the episode ends. That morning shook me to my core. Because even now, remembering it, it felt so real. I was sure. And that is the thing I fear most, that one day I might not be able to tell what is real anymore. That my instincts, my perception, my very sense of the world will betray me completely. The monster is not hiding under my bed or in the shadows. It is inside my head. And sometimes it wears a familiar face. The spiders and the door. I have never been formally diagnosed with schizophrenia, or any specific condition tied to hallucinations, but I see things. A lot. Enough that I probably should talk to a professional again. But honestly, they have not disrupted my life to the point where I feel forced to. So I just live with them. Years ago, I saw a counselor. I mentioned the hallucinations. She told me that if they were not commanding me to do anything, and I was still functioning okay, then I did not need to be alarmed. I took that and ran with it. But I have always felt like there's a difference between just seeing something and having it actually interact with you. I'm not sure what side of that line I'm on, but I feel like I'm getting closer to the edge. Most of what I see are spiders. I know that sounds simple, but it gets intense. Sometimes there will be just one huge spider, sitting still on the wall like it owns the place. Other times, it is thousands of tiny ones crawling in waves. They skitter across the ceiling, down the corners, across the floor. Occasionally, I see a medium-sized one with a maze of webs that stretch and stretch like something out of a nightmare. These episodes usually happen at night, either right before I fall asleep or just after I wake up. So I started wondering if it had something to do with how my brain transitions in and out of sleep. Like some part of it wakes up faster than the rest. It would almost make sense, except it still feels real. That is the part that bothers me. I've had these hallucinations long enough that I can tell what's real and what isn't, at least on a logical level. I'll look at the wall and think, that spider is not actually there. But I'll still see it. It's there to me, even if I know better. My eyes send the signal, and my brain just accepts it. And that is what scares me most. Not the spider, not the shape of it, not even the thousands crawling like a living shadow. It's the fact that they overpower what I know. I can tell myself it's not real, and yet I'll still grab the bug spray. I'll still move out of the way. I'll still react like it is actually happening. One hallucination I get over and over is a knocking on my bedroom door. Always the same pattern of knocks. Sometimes it's slow, other times it's rapid, like someone urgently needs something. It's so consistent that it became familiar. But no one is ever there. I know no one is there. Still, I'll get out of bed, walk over, and open the door. Every time. That's what makes me uneasy. Why do I act on it if I know it isn't real? Why does my body still go through the motions when my mind is screaming? This isn't happening. I don't feel like I'm losing my grip. I feel like I'm being dragged away from it, 1 inch at a time. Because if I can't fully trust my own senses, if I can't even rely on myself not to open a door I know shouldn't be knocked on, then what else can I trust? It's not the hallucinations themselves that frighten me anymore. I've come to expect them. What scares me is how real they feel. How powerless they make me feel. And how easily I'm pulled into believing them, if only for a moment. That moment is enough to shake me. The fear is not about bugs or knocks or strange shapes in the dark. It's about losing control of my own mind. And the truth is, I don't know how close I already am. The garage, the spiders, and the tall shadow. I've been diagnosed with bipolar disorder, not schizophrenia, though early on, doctors weren't sure. I was showing signs that had them looking closely in that direction. Hallucinations, paranoia, full-blown panic. It was a lot. It all started with this strange, staticky noise I kept hearing. It reminded me of a busted old radio, low, crackling, like voices just out of reach. At first, I brushed it off. I had just moved into a new place with my boyfriend, so I figured I was just not used to the sounds yet. Houses creak, walls hum, right? But then I started believing there was a couple living in the garage. Not renting it, hiding in it. I became completely convinced they meant me harm. I refused to go anywhere near the garage. Wouldn't even open the door. One night, my boyfriend convinced me to check it with him. I lasted maybe 10 seconds. I spotted that one of the side doors was ajar and bolted. I took the flashlight and ran. I was halfway through texting his mom that he might be dead before he came back inside, confused and annoyed. A few months later, I went through what I still call the worst night of my life. We had just broken up. It wasn't just one thing, but my spiraling paranoia and erratic behavior definitely played a role. After telling him it was over, I went into the bathroom to cry and try to collect myself. That's when I looked down and saw spiders all over me. My arms, my legs, my torso, they were crawling everywhere. It was horrifying. I knew something was off, but in that moment, logic didn't matter. My body panicked. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't move. I couldn't run to him either. I had just broken up with the guy. So I locked myself in the spare room. About an hour later, I heard 2 voices, right behind me, maybe 8 inches from my ear. They spoke in unison, low and slow. "It's coming!" My entire body froze. When I looked up, I saw this tall black figure standing in the corner of the room. Think British Royal Guard, but twisted, wrong. Something deeply evil. It didn't move. It just stood there, watching. The pressure in the room was unbearable. I broke. I ran back to my ex's room, totally shaken. He didn't know what to make of it, just thought I was being dramatic or manipulative or unstable. He kicked me back out. Later, he apologized. At the time, he just didn't understand how real it had all been for me. I left the next morning. I stayed away for 2 months. Eventually, I moved back in after he left for good. Since then, things have been better. The hallucinations aren't as frequent, and I've been doing okay. Life feels manageable now. Stable, even. I've told people before that bipolar disorder sometimes feels like getting little trial runs of other mental illnesses. You get brief, brutal glimpses of what it's like to live in someone else's nightmare, but then you get to come back. When I was first hospitalized, every doctor was leaning towards schizophrenia. Looking back, I get it. And if what I went through was just a fraction of that experience, then I can't even imagine what full-blown schizophrenia feels like. I count myself lucky. Really lucky. The invisible thing that kills you. I never met my great-grandmother, but her story has haunted me for years. She died because of her hallucinations, not from some accident or illness, but from being left alone with a mind she couldn't trust. She wasn't given proper care. That much is clear. She lived by herself, and from what I've heard, she became convinced that people were trying to kill her. She locked herself inside her home, boarded up, terrified. She armed herself and stayed in one spot for so long, terrified to move, that when they finally found her, she'd been dead for weeks. They said her legs had basically pickled from how often she had soiled herself. She had stopped going to the bathroom, stopped eating. And on top of it all, she'd gone through several bottles of whiskey. That was probably the only thing dulling the fear near the end. While sorting through the house afterward, they found dozens of stolen purses hidden away. Nothing was taken from them, not the money, not the cards, nothing. Just collected and kept. Nobody ever figured out why. To me, that's the most terrifying way to go. Not violence. Not even illness. Just pure, unrelenting fear that people are out to get you. Fear so intense you don't eat, don't move, don't speak. You just sit there and slowly die inside your own terror. My cousin, we're the same age, she has the same illness. Schizophrenia. She's been in and out of hospitals since we were teens. She tells people she's not human sometimes, says she's something more, something beyond. She hears spirits. Sometimes sees them. I don't fully understand it, but I try to respect it. She's attempted suicide more times than I can count. And that's the hardest part. Because even when she's not scared, she gets so wrapped up in her own world that she distances herself from everyone. When she's in that state, she doesn't seem to need us. Doesn't want us. But when that feeling passes, the isolation hits her like a truck, and then she spirals. I'm grateful we have better systems now. Doctors, meds, emergency lines. She's alive. That alone feels like a win compared to what happened to our great-grandmother. Sometimes I worry I might carry that same shadow. I've never been diagnosed with schizophrenia, just bipolar, but during some manic phases, things get strange. I don't see full hallucinations, not like others have described. But I see motion, flickers, people-shaped things moving out of the corners of my eyes. And sometimes I hear whispers. Not words. Just whispers. Like someone is standing just behind a door, talking too quietly to understand, but you know they're there. And what really scares me isn't the sounds or the flickers. It's the feeling that comes with them, this deep, bone-crushing certainty that something awful is about to happen. Like death is seconds away. Like I'm about to die and there's nothing I can do about it. That's what makes it terrifying. Honestly, what I need to do is stop messing around with weed and psychedelics. Mushrooms, acid, all that stuff. It's like I'm inviting something dangerous into my head when I know my genes are already loaded with bad wiring. I don't even enjoy it most of the time. I just want to forget. But I know better. TLDR, my great-grandmother died a slow, terrifying death inside a locked house, convinced someone was going to kill her. My cousin's life is a tug-of-war with her mind. And for me, the scariest hallucinations aren't the ones you see, it's the invisible dread that wraps around your brain and whispers, "This is it." How to help someone with hallucinations? If you know someone who struggles with hallucinations, there are a few things you can do to make things easier for them when you're around. First off, don't call out to them from another room. It can be really confusing or even frightening if they hear a voice but don't see the person. Instead, try to make eye contact when you talk. That helps them connect what they're hearing or seeing with a real person. Hallucinations don't just mean seeing things. Sometimes it's hearing things, smelling things, feeling things that aren't really there. People differ on which senses get affected most. Some have mostly auditory hallucinations, hearing voices or sounds, while others have more visual ones. So, the best thing you can do is stay calm and don't do anything that might startle or provoke them. Give them time and space to figure out what's real and what's not. I want to dig a little deeper on that. People dealing with schizophrenia or similar disorders often have to teach themselves how to tell hallucinations apart from reality. They learn to watch for clues, like checking other people's reactions, or noticing if things around them look or sound different. Sometimes they need a moment longer to answer questions. They might ask you to repeat yourself or wait until they feel sure before speaking. Be patient with that. Hallucinations aren't all the same either. Auditory hallucinations, for example, can sound louder or softer than real noises. Sometimes the voices echo, or sound distorted, like they're coming through a bad speaker. These effects don't happen with real sounds in the room, so it's a clue they're not real. Visual hallucinations can be tricky. People often say they're easier to recognize than auditory ones, but that doesn't mean they're easier to ignore. Some visual hallucinations are scary, like seeing threatening figures or shadows. Others can be strange but harmless, like the tiny people alcoholics sometimes see, called Lilliputian hallucinations. And there's a condition called Alice in Wonderland syndrome where the world looks warped or weird. Less common, but just as upsetting, are hallucinations involving smell and touch. Smell hallucinations often happen at night. People might think they smell gas leaks or something burning, which can be terrifying and cause a lot of stress because they don't know if it's real or not. Tactile hallucinations are when you feel like something is touching or crawling on your skin. This one is hard to ignore. It can keep people awake for hours. It often comes along with delusions, which makes things even harder. So, if you want to help someone who's hallucinating, be calm, patient, and aware of these things. Don't yell from another room. Look them in the eyes. Give them time. And don't take it personally if they seem confused or scared. They're fighting battles you can't see. The invisible grip and the shadow in the woods. I don't have full schizophrenia, just psychosis. But I still get hallucinations and delusions. I'm a woman, and honestly, my worst experiences are kind of unusual compared to what you usually hear on TV or in movies. Most of my worst hallucinations have been tactile, meaning things I feel, not just see or hear. But I also had a scary visual hallucination once, which I'll get to at the end. The tactile one started back in 2014. It began with this feeling like something invisible was climbing into bed with me and spooning me. It was creepy, but at first, I just tried to ignore it. Over time, it got more intense, more hands-on. Eventually, I started a course of antipsychotic meds, and they went away. But then in 2016, it came back full force. I don't want to say it. Had sex with me. Because it's all a hallucination, and none of it was real or visual. Still, something definitely happened, at least in my head. It only lasted once, but for days afterward, I kept feeling it touch me, not just in my bedroom, but all day, anywhere. One time, while I was doing dishes, it pinned me up against the sink. It felt like a power move, like it was saying, I can get to you wherever I want. That was terrifying. Another round of meds stopped it again, but I dread when it might come back. Now for the visual hallucination. One night, I was walking home from university class when suddenly I got dizzy. My vision started to warp a little, and then I felt this weird pull, like something was making me look across the street, toward the woods. That's when I saw it. Slender Man. There he was, standing just at the edge of the trees. I didn't stop to stare. I ran all the way back home and didn't look back once. I couldn't sleep that night. That moment was probably the first time I realized something was seriously wrong. The tactile hallucinations kicked in after that, when I got back home at the end of the school year. What's even stranger is that the Slender Man stabbing case happened around the same time. Maybe even the same year. I can't help but wonder if my hallucination had anything to do with that, or if it was just a coincidence.